All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, this might be a quick one because I mean, we're just kind of going over the news and talking about stuff we talked about last time. We do have a comment to address. I actually brought it up that apparently the commenter didn't like Peter Boghossian, but I read it more closely. He apparently doesn't like me. So
Oh,
we'll
okay.
we'll go through that and we'll probably riff on that. Was hitting the news a little bit, and that Saudi Arabian deal is pretty intense that just happened. So I might bring up an ex post on that, and we'll go over it because hey, world peace is awesome, right? Let's
Well,
let's keep that trend going. Yeah.
supposedly, and yet, um, th
Yeah.
this is, we were texting last night, and it's been a while since I've ranted about this, but in the last couple of years, the term mental health has been thrown around a lot, and yet I have I contended we don't really mean it because when people talk about mental health, it is either um, so for instance, the example I use is anti-gun lefties will use suicide stats to boost gun crime statistics. And that is a frankly sleazy thing to do because what you
Mhm.
should be talking about is the underlying issue, which is male suicidality, but you don't want to talk about that. You want to cudgel to push your agenda.
Mhm.
Or on the other kind of extreme, you have I've brain farted on her name again, even though I bring her up all the time. The British psychologist that was on Williamson a year, 18 months ago, talk and the title of the episode was "Stop Getting Your Mental Health Advice from Instagram." Uh,
Yeah. Oh, was that uh Indian name, right?
yeah, it's an Indian name,
Yeah,
which makes it even
starts with
harder to remember.
CH. Yeah,
Yeah,
CHATWE, I think is so I'm not going to try to pronounce that,
yeah,
but
yeah. But
yeah.
her basic point was this isn't mental health. This is a Hallmark card. This is a slogan.
Mhm.
That
Well, yeah,
so
this is internet mental health 101, and I've ranted about this multiple times, but uh it's targeted at females, which already tells you that it's not going to help the people that are committing the suicide because that's our
mhm,
demographic actually. But it's also it spreads this epidemic we've had lately. I'm not going to use that term lightly, but epidemic of selfishness and narcissism.
mhm,
The internet world, the social media world has increased because everything's on a spectrum. Yeah, your predispositions from genetics, but that's like 50% heritable. That gives you 25% either way. So if you're 30% on the spectrum of narcissism, you could end up on the plus side of that with the proper treatment. And this internet self-help, self-love, self-care, self this, the key word to that is self.
mhm.
It is over and over and over again. The problem is we're social beings, and our sense of belonging is actually part of ourself. And if you're selfish on everything you do, you're going to miss out on that belonging, and you're going to be twice as depressed because you're doing everything chasing this happiness and nothing's working, so you're going to spiral. And yeah, that's our internet world as far as self-help. But this is why I'm in the industry now. I went back to school because I saw it was broken, and you can't fix it from the outside because nobody takes you seriously.
Mhm.
So, when I get this degree and everybody says, "Oh, what are they going to say then?" They're going to say, "Oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about." No, they have to say, "I know what I'm talking about because I did it," right?
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell because they probably just will hear what they don't want to hear and go the other direction. I've been there before.
Yeah.
I've been in the health industry for a long time. You tell somebody they don't want to hear, they walk right out that door.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Um.
Let's get the comment out of the way first because
Okay.
we always do that ahead at the beginning. This is from Peter Potnoodle. I kind of like the name. Uh, the teacher is a fool. If violence settled problems, we would be living in peace right now, and we are not. Ergo, the point is well made. Violence does not solve anything. Violence only makes more violence probable. The fact that something happened in history does not mean it ought to happen. You are no philosophers, is what they said to us.
Well, I wasn't pretending to be, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, a philosopher is just someone who talks about ideas, right?
well,
But
but I also think you would have to not just talk, but think deeply and work out structures. I mean, there's syllogisms, it's but I do think you could put Heinlein in that camp.
mhm,
That is what he's referring to about the teacher, is the passage I read from Heinlein's Starship Troopers. And Heinlein, a lot of the great sci-fi authors you could call philosophers.
mhm,
Um, go a while back, Peter. I go back a search for our episode where I talk about Blade Runner and Philip K. Dick and where that came from. That was a very deeply philosophical musing of his, of what does it mean to be human.
mhm,
Okay. And for Heinlein, at least in this book, as I said, he goes off in different directions. His books are often thought experiments. He's thinking out loud in a lot of ways. And so it's hard to pin him down of, oh, he believed this, which
mhm.
is why he gets labeled as a fascist a lot. And it's,
Well,
well, have you read
the
his other
best
stuff?
philosophers, you have to say, what did they actually believe? Because they talk about so many different things, you know. But let me address that exact point about violence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I didn't say in the last one. But you want to talk philosophy? Let me bring fitness into this because that's my lane, apparently, right? Everything worth doing has to be renewed over and over and over again. You don't go in the gym and do one rep of bench press and better for the rest of your life. You have to keep renewing it. That was part of our point is this thing that happened. Okay, so Hitler exists, right? We had to step in and take care of that person because he was bad and evil. That doesn't mean it's never going to happen again,
Mm-hmm.
but the threat of taking care of it prevents it from happening, at least to some degree. But we're humans. We're not perfect. So when it comes up again, we have to renew that thing again. Just like I have to go back in and do more bench press to stay strong, right? So it's everything worth doing. You have to replenish. You have to eat. You don't eat once and then you're good for the rest of your life. You have to eat every day properly so you can stay alive. That doesn't mean food is bad. That doesn't mean food is good. Violence isn't bad or good. It depends on how you use it and when it's
Mm-hmm.
used and what it's used for. Uh, it's just like everything else, and anything worthwhile has to be renewed. Heraclitus, my favorite philosopher. I need to add him to the three. I need to figure out who I'm going to push out for Heraclitus, but Heraclitus is my favorite Greek philosopher. He's the step into a river, you're never the same man stepping in the same river twice, right? That's because everything in life is that way. The flux and the fire. Everything is renewed, and anything worthwhile you have to actively renew. Same in that situation.
Well, and we touched on that actually when we discussed that passage after I finished reading it. And one of the things we pointed out is it's not just violence, but also the threat of
Mm-hmm.
violence, which can prevent actual violence. So to your point, Peter, let me quote it directly here. The fact that something happened in history does not mean it ought to happen. Yeah, absolutely. But why did it happen? So staying on the World War II example, one of the things that made Churchill and why he is remembered the way he is remembered is because he was one of the early major political figures who actually pointed out the danger of Hitler and the rise of Nazism and how appeasement was only going to lead to greater danger down the road. And there is a school of thought within history, even academic history, especially military history, that um, had the British and the French stood together against uh, the Sudetenland deal and said, no, absolutely not. You're not going to do this. Hitler would have backed down, almost certainly. In fact, there is correspondence to that effect previously that we know now. They didn't know at the time, but um, when one of the first militaristic things Hitler did when he took power was rearm the Rhineland, which was this. So basically, part of the Versailles Treaty is they created a DMZ on the western edge of Germany that said you cannot have troops here, which was a big deal because that's generally where you put your troops is on your border to protect your borders. And they said no, because you keep using it as a springboard for invasion. Well, he moved troops back into the Rhineland to reoccupy those border fortifications. He had given secret orders to the generals that were in charge of that. If France comes out, you withdraw, because he knew they weren't ready for a conflict yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is your ought to happen. Yeah, it didn't have to happen, but the threat of violence could perhaps have preempted some of the worst violence history has ever seen, which is World War II.
Well, and when good men are not capable of violence, then the bad men will prevail. I'm rewatching Vikings, which is an amazing show. And I got out of school and I had time and I looked at new shows and I said, there's nothing here I want to watch. So I'll rewatch this one that I really loved. And what makes Ragnar so special in that show, Heath, since you watched it? What makes him so special? Why
I've
is
only
he the
watched the
except?
first I've only watched the first season, and I
You get
started the
it. You get it in
second,
the first season. So
and I didn't get it. But uh, I would
what?
say um his how do I phrase this? He What makes him special is he is a great leader, but he is a great leader because he has this kind of intuitive understanding of the people he is leading.
There's that, but there's a overarching theme with him because he claims to be Odin's son or Odin's descendant, but he defies the gods all the time.
Mm,
And this is his brother's frustration with him. So you see this back and forth
yeah,
with his
because that's
brother
the start of the conflict at the beginning of the second season. Yeah.
because he wants to expand to farm.
Hmm.
He lives in a death cult. The Viking, the Odin son religion basically is a death cult. That you get that with the old man that wants to fight for him. He says, I've been in many battles and I've never felt the point of a spear. I need that. I need to die in battle. They worship dying in battle. How do you have peace with that?
Mhm.
How do you have peace with that? And then you go to someone like Douglas Murray now, and you listen to the actual debate between him and Dave Smith. Douglas Murray talks about the fact that there are death cults out there that worship dying in battle. As long as those exist, what stands against that?
Mhm.
What stands against that is good people that don't worship that and want to protect people. Okay. The threat of that, the fact that that exists is the only thing that is keeping us from being just destroyed right now. Because there are groups of people, and I'm not going to name them on YouTube because we'll get banned, that worship dying in battle, that worship dying, sacrificing your life for a religious purpose.
And or slaughtering your enemies.
Yeah, well, both. Yeah. So
Mhm.
yeah, you get rewarded for either. So it's a win-win. You either slaughter your enemies and you win, or you die doing it and you win. What stands against that? That's
Mhm.
the question. And I mean, you can't just it can't be the tinkers, right?
Mhm.
Because if everybody was tinkers in that situation, we'd all be dead.
Well, back to Vikings. I haven't I know from what you've told me he shows up later, but similar show that covers the same era, The Last Kingdom,
Hmm.
from the English side. And Alfred the Great is great because he stood against the Viking invasion
Hmm.
and was successful in it. And that is why he is remembered as the Great and also considered the first king of England because he unified England and kicked the Vikings out eventually. The Vikings were either kicked out or subsumed
I was
into
about to say they
English
integrated a
culture.
little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of integration there, but
Which is the point of the story. Those two shows, actually, if you watch them side by side, you just basically get it from two different perspectives. It's like the same story. Exactly.
it's like Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima,
Yeah.
which incredibly underrated movie, especially when you put the two together. But to the point of kind of how we get here is um when I went off on my seeming tangent about mental health is the reason I did that is because there's a lot of talk of world peace. There's a lot of talk of
Mm.
anti-war, and yet, so a lot of people on the right brought this up during both Obama administrations is how many drone strikes, how many SOCOM actions did he initiate? All of the there was a ramp up of violence under the Obama administration, and okay, maybe it was justified, maybe it wasn't. But the point on the right is we're not even having the discussion. What the hell happened to Code Pink?
Hmm.
Because you were all anti-war under the two Bush administrations, and now all of a sudden, you know,
Well, it
where are you?
might be the source of the first Trump administration because not the right, but the independents that were like, Obama's going to end war, and he comes in and has more strikes than the previous
Mm-hmm.
administration. A lot of those independents were like, hey, wait a minute.
Including a targeted strike on an American citizen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they still bring it up to this day. Independent journalists still talk about it. You go to Glenn Greenwald, Tim Pool, all of them. They fell off the Obama wagon after those things,
Mm-hmm.
and Hillary represented those things. So
Yeah.
everybody's like, "Oh, it's because she's a girl." No, it wasn't because she's a woman. It was because she represented the thing that betrayed everybody that voted for Obama.
And so I try and point out where I was wrong, where I've changed my mind on things. And one of those, back to the Trump first administration. So the thing that gets brought up a lot is the Abrahamic Accords, because that's a
Mhm.
big effing deal, because peace in the Middle East has been you know, uh, the has turned every president for almost a century into Tantalus,
Mhm.
right? They're always chasing that and they can never catch it. Um, but the thing that sticks out to me, because this is more in my wheelhouse, because my focus of study has been East Asia more, is his meeting with the little pot-bellied dictator from North Korea. And at
Mm.
the time, I didn't like it. And the analogy I made to people, you know, even Trump supporting friends and family, of why I didn't like it was the imagery of Trump standing there shaking hands with this guy and the flags behind them. And when you do these diplomatic things, it's always, alternating flags of the countries represented. And, oh, I just brain farted an RNA. Yeonmi Park, the
Yes, yes.
yeah, go listen to if you can. It's hard to stomach sometimes when she gets into the details.
Yoemi Park, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
uh, she is a refugee from North Korea, and she talks about how horrible it is there. And so my point at the time was this would be like Roosevelt standing there with Hitler shaking hands with the American flag right next to the Nazi flag.
Mm.
Well, it occurred to me later, but one of your heroes and one of the people you consider top three or top five president, Ronald Reagan, did that. The Soviet Union was every bit as evil. In fact, one of the things that he did that was such a big effing deal that all of his advisors said, don't do this, was calling them an evil empire. But he was right. He was right to call them out. but he was also right to meet with Gorbachev because he had to,
Hmm.
because the threat of nuclear war is so existential. Yeah, they are an evil empire, but they are also a superpower. We are the other superpower, and I need to negotiate with them if
Well,
I can.
not only that, an empire full of regular people.
Yes.
We could say what we want about Gorbachev or whoever was in charge, at any given time, Stalin or whatever. The people are still the people, and they're just trying to live. They're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to get by.
And so Trump was trying to make a deal both for the poor oppressed people of North Korea, but also the people in South Korea and Japan that are under this constant threat from these psychopaths. To his credit, I didn't like the way he did it. That's just his style. He's very bombastic, and if he's trying to make a deal with you, he's going to butter you up and praise you. And yeah, you don't like that when it's someone like a dictator who purposely starves his people, who who was the psycho evil dude in Game of Thrones with the dogs? Um,
Oh
it
yeah,
was in the later seasons, and I was kind of zoning out by
yeah,
then because
yeah.
they
The
were,
one that cut
yeah,
off what's his name's. Yeah.
yeah, and he wasn't he also the bad guy in the first John Wick? Wasn't he the son of the
I've never
anyway?
seen John. I'm actually one of the rare people in this world that
Oh
have never
wow.
seen John Wick. So yeah.
Anyway, the point being, that is how medieval that place is, because Kim did that to, I think, one of his brothers or uncle. It was a relative. He fed him to a pack of hungry dogs.
Hmm.
Um, the more well known one is these poor girls that got conned into, um, unbeknownst to them, poisoning Kim's half brother, who had fled Korea a long time ago and had aspirations to be a singer. He wanted nothing to do with politics. He wanted nothing to do with North Korea, but he was seen as a potential threat and he was murdered.
Well, he would have been an example of how Kim Jong, whatever
Yeah.
it was at the time, is not a god.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's how they try to portray it, is he is a god.
And so, as much as you don't want to talk to people like that, unfortunately, there are times where you have to.
Hmm.
Back to where we were a few minutes ago about ought. Well, yeah, this ought not to happen. I wish it wouldn't, but it is. And to his credit, when he couldn't get a good deal, when he couldn't get the deal he wanted, they said, "All right, I'm out.
Hmm.
Fine, be isolated." And he worked to isolate them even further than they already are. And kudos to him for that. That was a win, whether you like the method or not. An ugly win is still a win.
Hmm. Yeah, which kind of gets us to what happened just the other day, because uh this is the same guy. He went over to, I guess I'll just pull it up here. This guy pops across my feed a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and give him a follow here before we're done. But Carl Meta, he does a lot of reporting on the Middle East, and yeah, we just cut a deal in with Saudi Arabia and Syria and the whole region. And these three bullet points say it all. Commerce replaces military intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So you Bush haters from the day, yeah, this is important. Regional powers control their own destiny. No more regime changes. No more freaking setting up an ISIS that comes and attacks us later. No more setting up a Taliban that comes and attacks us later. And then America supports without occupying. That's, I mean, it, if you were a former lefty or you're a lefty now and you don't support those three bullet points, I mean, you're just being stubborn. I'm sorry, because that is exactly what we were begging for during the Bush years,
Mm-hmm.
and we did not get with the Obama years. And then he pivots and says, "Okay, Syria, we're going to take your sanctions away. You can trade with us now." And then he pivots again and says, "Hey, Iran, we don't want to fight you. We want to cut a deal." Now the ball's in their court.
Mm-hmm.
You've just propped up everybody around them and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you."
But at the same time, he is moving or has moved, and I've heard reports that there's already a B2 squadron in Diego Garcia, and I've heard they're moving a B52 squadron to Diego Garcia as well, because that's the stick. Take the carrot, or there's a big freaking stick coming.
There's a big freaking stick, and they've been showing it to Dave Smith's lament. This is his blind spot.
Mhm.
He posted a video which was a bunch of Houthis meeting with their guns, getting the ammo out to everybody to attack a U.S. ship, and a drone takes them out.
Mhm.
Just, and he's like, "See, this is not what we voted for," and blah blah blah. I'm like, that prevented a lot of people from dying.
Mhm.
This is your blind spot. Some of these things need to happen because those are not good people.
Mhm.
Those are people in a death cult that are willing to take it out, and they're going to do it on U.S. citizens. If you have to attach a country to it, on people who are just trying to do their job, who are just sailing a boat through a canal, okay? And you prevented a lot of people from dying with that strike. It was precision, it was surgical. Only the bad people died. And yeah, that's the blind spot there. And that's the stick that you were talking about, right? That is the thing. Hey, we are capable of this. It's like, did you ever see that interview with the two they were like ambassadors of some kind, and they were talking about Trump meeting with a leader of one of these organizations, and he said, "Look, here's the deal we're gonna make." And the guy's like, "No, I don't want that deal." He says, "Well, here's a picture of your house."
I think it was one of the Taliban leaders
Yeah, it was
when he
one of the
was
Taliban.
working
I think it was,
on.
yeah, it was either ISIS or Taliban or one of those. And he said,
Yeah.
"Here's a picture of your house."
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was when he was negotiating with the Taliban in order to create the the deal that would lead to a structured drawdown in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
And that's what infuriated me when people would criticize the debacle that was the Afghanistan withdrawal under Biden is, well, this was Trump's deal. Yes, Trump's deal had benchmarks, and it
Hmm.
also, to your point, had that big stick of, hi, here's a drone picture of your house with you standing outside. Just remember that.
Just remember that. Yeah, just keep that in your mind.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just in case,
which is that
it.
threat of violence. It's there. I mean, you have to be capable of it. It's stepping back from the snake, but you never take your eyes off the snake with the stick you're about to whack it with
Mhm.
as you step away from it. Yeah, you don't want to fight the snake, but you're not going to let it just come after you either.
Yeah, exactly. Um, oh, speaking of Bogosian, which we referenced earlier,
Oh, by the way, wait, let me add one thing from that thread. All of this stuff that just happened in the Middle East, guess what's happening next week? Peace talks with Ukraine and Russia because of this stuff in the Middle East. This set up the peace talks because this is what he was offering the whole time to Zelensky. Give us mineral rights, give us a business investment in your area, and we will be invested in you keeping your area. That's what he's been trying to say the whole time. Make us invested.
this is complete speculation on my part,
Yeah.
total speculation. But also, a week or two ago, there was a swarm of drone strikes in and around Moscow. There was footage of helicopters flying anti-drone patrols because they have so reduced their stockpile of surface to air missiles and other ordnance to deal with these drone swarms, and it is almost certain that we had a hand in not doing that, but in helping Ukraine do it. So there's the stick again of, all right, we offered this deal to Zelensky. He was a dingleberry, but then he came back and said, okay, we'll take the deal. But then Russia escalated. Okay, Russia, if you want to escalate, here's what's going to happen. And it is probable that those drone strikes all the way into Moscow, deeper into Russian territory, brought Putin to the table as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he did it in a way that was a win for everyone, because what has been the biggest hurdle in this whole Ukraine situation is the military industrial complex. Well, he opened up basically sales for those same companies in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in all of these places as part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have his book up behind me, The Art of the Deal. He is wheeling and dealing. And one of the statements he made in that speech there is, these conflicts are draining America. Let's all profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, maybe 20 years from now, we'll look back at it and say, oh, he set up this great war that we have now. But I don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
I see this as preventative personally, and I'm all for it. Let's like, as he said in that CNN interview, I just wanted people to stop dying. And I want that too. I mean, personally.
I don't know if it still holds true. In fact, I'm almost certain it no longer does, because it certainly has been broken by this point. But there used to be something called the McDonald's principle, and I guarantee they exist in Ukraine and
Oh, I
Russia.
think I know
So
what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
but back in the 90s and early 2000s, this was brought up a lot when it came to economic engagement as a soft power projection. And the McDonald's principle was, and this held true for like half a century, no two countries, even in small scale conflict, no two countries that had McDonald's ever went to war with each other. And it wasn't because McDonald's was magical. The point was, if you reach a point of economic comfort that you can afford fast food and the iconic fast food franchise, you don't go to war with each other. You figure out another way to deal with your problems.
I haven't had McDonald's since 2002 when I was a manager there. Remember that way back in the day? I might have McDonald's in that honor today, maybe for lunch. I might go get a quarter pounder or something. It's probably $80 these days, but
thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring up Boghossian and Dad Saves America quickly, because oops, our bad. What's Dad Saves America's?
His name is John. We kept calling him Dave.
Don't know where
that's
that
actually
came
on
from.
me, because I think I'm the first one that called him Dave in that conversation. But his name is John. Yeah.
All right. Did you have more you wanted to talk about here, or are we going to make this a quickie?
Oh no, this has got to be a quickie, just for time constraints. We'll be back with Robin talk on the Wheel of Time episode. We're over analyzing Forsaken, and actually this one's not so bad if you're a show lover, because we actually loved the portrayal of him in the show. So that one probably won't be too bad. Now I do have to nitpick on it because of what I think Robin represented in the books was changed, but I do like the change in some ways. So yeah, we'll get onto that. I don't need to beat any dead horses here. Violence is sometimes necessary, but we don't like it, so we approve of the things that happened in the last week. That's the summary of the episode.
There you go. All right, we'll see y'all next time.
All right, later.